Premier League stadiums are architectural landmarks that define their communities, but what stood on these hallowed grounds before the first whistle blew? From industrial wasteland and rubbish processing plants to disused nurseries and Commonwealth Games venues, the origins of England's greatest football grounds reveal a fascinating transformation. Welcome to Big Builds. Let's start with one of the most dramatic transformations in modern football. Arsenal's Emirates Stadium opened in 2006, replacing the beloved Highbury after 93 years. But before construction crews arrived in Ashburton Grove, this 17-acre triangular site, just 450 meters from Highbury, was far from glamorous. It was an industrial estate housing a waste recycling center, 80% owned by Islington Council, Railtrack, and Sainsbury's. Arsenal purchased the land in 2000, transforming a rubbish processing plant and industrial buildings into a 60,704-seat stadium that cost £390 million, with Emirates Airlines securing naming rights for £100 million in a deal that revolutionized English football sponsorship. Just across North London, Tottenham Hotspur faced similar challenges. Their new stadium, which opened in April 2019, replaced the iconic White Hart Lane after 118 years. But here's the remarkable part. Tottenham built their billion-pound venue on almost the exact same footprint as the old ground. White Hart Lane itself was constructed on land that was originally a disused nursery when Spurs moved there in 1899, leased from Charrington's brewery behind the White Hart pub. The new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, with its 62,850 capacity and the world's first dividing retractable pitch for NFL games, literally rose where generations of Spurs supporters had stood, incorporating concrete from White Hart Lane's foundations into the new structure as a tribute to its history. Across the Mersey, Everton are about to make their own historic move. In the 2025-2026 season, the Toffees will leave Goodison Park after 133 years to move into their new 52,888-seat stadium at Bramley Moor Dock. The new site is a historic dock dating back to 1848 on Liverpool's waterfront. Goodison Park, which opened in 1892, holds the distinction of being the first purpose-built football stadium in England, rather than just adapted open grounds. When Everton depart, they'll leave behind over a century of history, but Bramley Moor Dock represents a dramatic regeneration of a derelict industrial waterfront into a state-of-the-art football venue. Manchester City's Etihad Stadium tells a different origin story. The ground wasn't built specifically for football at all. It opened in 2003 after Manchester hosted the 2002 Commonwealth Games, where it served as the athletic centerpiece. When City moved from their historic Main Road home, which they'd occupied since 1923, engineers had to completely reconfigure the stadium for football. The pitch was lowered by 6 meters, and an entire new lower tier of seating was added, a remarkable feat of conversion that increased capacity from the Commonwealth Games layout. Today it holds 53,400 and is scheduled for further expansion towards 60,000. West Ham United made a similar Olympic transition. The London Stadium, which became their home in 2016, was purpose-built for the 2012 London Olympics. Before Olympic construction began in 2008, the site in Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park at Stratford was industrial wasteland, part of the Lower Lee Valley's post-industrial landscape. West Ham left behind Upton Park, their home since 1904, known as the Boleyn Ground, which was demolished to make way for housing. The conversion from Olympic athletics venue to football stadium required extensive reconfiguration, including retractable seating to bring supporters closer to the pitch. Southampton's St. Mary's Stadium opened in 2001, replacing the Dell, which had been home since 1898. The St. Mary's site had previously housed Southampton Gasworks, an industrial facility that required significant remediation and redevelopment. Leicester City made a similar move in 2002 when Gary Lineker officially opened their King Power Stadium. The Foxes left Filbert Street, their home since 1891, for a new 32,000-seat venue built on industrial and employment land near Freeman's Common. Brighton and Hove Albion's journey to the Amex Stadium in 2011 was one of the most protracted in English football. Before the Amex was built at Falmer, the site was agricultural downland, protected countryside that required years of planning battles and public inquiries before construction could proceed. The Amex, with its striking bold design nestled into the South Downs landscape, transformed a rural site into a 31,000-seat venue that's become an architectural landmark. Brentford Community Stadium, which opened in 2020, allowed the Bees to leave Griffin Park after 116 years for a former industrial area near Kew Bridge. But not every Premier League club has moved. Some of the most historic grounds remain in the continuous use. Old Trafford, Manchester United's Theatre of Dreams, opened in 1910 on land that was previously a clay pit. Designed by legendary stadium architect Archibald Leitch, Old Trafford has been expanded repeatedly and now holds 74,197, making it the largest club stadium in England. Anfield has an unusual origin story. The ground opened in 1884, but not for Liverpool. It was built for Everton, who rented the site from local landowner John Orrell. When John Holding bought the site himself in 1892, a dispute over rent led Everton to leave. Holding found himself with an empty stadium and responded by forming a new club, Liverpool Football Club. Anfield has since become one of world football's most atmospheric venues, recently expanded to over 61,000 capacity. Villa Park, home to Aston Villa since 1897, is a Victorian-era gem that's hosted more FA Cup semi-finals than any other ground. St. James Park in Newcastle is even older, dating back to 1880. However, it predates Newcastle United itself, with Newcastle Rangers being the first club to play there. Fulham's Craven Cottage has been home since 1896, but the site dates to 1780, when the original Craven Cottage, a royal hunting lodge, was built. Remarkably, a plane tree survives within the Putney End, the only such tree in any British senior football stadium. Burnley's Turf Moor has similar deep roots. Cricket was played on the site as early as 1833, but it wasn't until 1883 that a football ground adjacent to the cricket field was created. Burnley Football Club, formed just a year earlier, were invited to share the land. Crystal Palace's Selhurst Park opened in 1924 on former brickworks and farmland. Portman Road, Ipswich Town's home since 1884, was previously a cattle market and allotments. Sheffield United's Bramall Lane, which dates back to 1855, is the oldest major stadium still hosting professional football in the world. Watford's Vicarage Road, opened in 1922, was built on former allotments. Wolverhampton Wanderers' Molineux Stadium opened in 1889, named after the nearby Molineux House. Nottingham Forest's City Ground has sat on the banks of the River Trent since 1898. Stamford Bridge, Chelsea's home since 1905, was originally used for athletics before being adapted for football. The transformation of all these sites accelerated after the 1989 Hillsborough disaster. The subsequent Taylor Report recommended that all top-flight stadiums become all-seaters by the start of the 1994-95 season, fundamentally changing English football architecture. Standing terraces were replaced with seating, capacities often decreased, and clubs were forced to either dramatically redevelop their existing grounds or move to new sites entirely. This regulatory shift, combined with the financial explosion of the Premier League era beginning in 1992, created the conditions for the wave of new stadium construction we've seen over the past 30 years. Several themes emerge. Industrial sites provided large urban parcels ripe for redevelopment. Agricultural land on city outskirts offered expansion space. Olympic and Commonwealth Games legacy venues gave clubs opportunities to inherit world-class facilities. Clubs that could afford staying close to historic homes chose to do so, with Arsenal moving just 450 meters and Tottenham building on the same site. Stadium architect Archibald Leitch shaped early 20th century grounds across England, designing for Manchester United, Liverpool, Everton, Tottenham, and many others. His steel-framed structures with pitched roofs defined an era of stadium architecture. From waste disposal sites to world-class sporting venues, from disused nurseries to billion-pound stadiums, Premier League grounds have risen from remarkably diverse origins. The transformation reflects broader urban change, as English cities evolved from industrial centers to service economies, redeveloping brownfield sites and adapting to new planning frameworks. Each stadium tells a story not just of football, but of urban regeneration, community identity, and the changing face of English cities. As Everton prepares to leave Goodison Park in 2025, they'll join the growing list of clubs who've transformed industrial or derelict sites into modern sporting cathedrals. Big Builds will continue monitoring Premier League stadium developments and the ongoing evolution of these historic venues. For more comprehensive Premier League stadium coverage, subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update on the grounds that define the beautiful game.